Welcome to the Sea Files, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we are doing the Battle of Christmas, Part 2, right out of this book. The Battle for Christmas, a cultural history of America's most cherished holiday. It's a Pulitzer Prize finalist by Stefan Nissenbaum, excuse me. And we're going to continue with the reading from last time. And this will be Persecuting the Christmas Keeper, 1620 to 1750. So let's learn about the history of Christmas in America. And we begin. In early modern Europe, all this post-harvest behavior operated within, though at the boundaries of, the normal social order. It was part of a cultural world that went back thousands of years and involved the yearly agricultural cycle, which defined which defined an integrated work and play, which times of intense labor followed by times of equally intense celebration. This seasonal cycle, perhaps more than anything else, was what determined the texture of people's lives. It was even apportioned by the church, as the Christmas season itself had been, and given a religious gloss, whereby times of celebration were associated with any number of official saints, days, that were generally observed and more reverently than piety. Let me read that sentence again for you. It was even appropriate by the church, as the Christmas season itself had been, and given a religious gloss, whereby times of celebration were associated with any number of official saints' days that were generally observed with more revelry than piety. Here was exactly what the Puritans tried to suppress when they came to power in England and New England in the middle of the 17th century. It was this entire cultural world with its periodic seasons of labor and festivity, and not just Christmas itself, that Puritans felt to be corrupt, pagan, evil. It was this world that they systematically attempted to abolish and purify. They wished to replace it with a simpler, more orderly culture in which people were more disciplined and self-regulated, in which ornate churches and cathedrals were replaced by plain meeting houses, in which lavish periodic celebrations, the seasonal cycle itself, were replaced by an orderly and regular succession of days, punctuated only by a weekly day of rest and self-examination, the Sabbath. Christmas was an important and symbolically charged expression of this cultural world, and the Puritans attacked it with particular intensity. In England, the Puritan Parliament made a point of holding regular sessions each December 25th from 1644 through 1656. And it did what it could to suppress the traditional observance of the date. In 1644, Parliament actually decreed that December 25 was to be observed as a day of fasting and repentance. For the sinful way, the occasion had been made into a time of giving liberty to carnal and sensual delights. One unhappy Englishman referred to those delights as nothing more than liberty and harmless sports, by which the toiling plowsman and laborer were wont to be recreated and their spirits and hopes revived for a whole 12 months. But the Puritans had made these innocent customs extinct and put out of use, as if they never had been. Thus are the merry lords of misrule suppressed by the mad lords of bad rule at Westminster Parliament. In England, the success of the Puritans was limited and temporary. Legislation banning the celebration of Christmas was contested in many places, even during the 1640s and 1650s. Excuse me. When Puritans controlled the government, there were riots in several towns, and the policy was quickly reversed in 1660 upon the restoration of the English monarchy. But in New England, the Puritans did largely succeed in eliminating Christmas, along with many of the other practices of English popular culture. David D. Hall has succinctly described the transformed culture of what he aptly terms a New Protestant vernacular. Psalm singing replaced ballads. Ritual was reorganized around the celebration of the Sabbath and of the fast days. No town in New England had a maypole. No group celebrated Christmas or St. Valentine's Day or staged a pre-Lenten carnival. Take the example of almanacs. Almanacs had become popular in England by the 17th century, and they remained popular in New England as well. Well, English almanacs generally listed Christmas, along with the bevy of saints' days that showed the commitment of the Church of England to the old seasonally based calendar. These saints' days were known as red letter days because in English almanacs and church calendars, they were printed in red ink. But in the 17th century, New England almanacs were purified of all these old associations. Indeed, for a time, even the common names for the days of the week were purged from the almanac on account of their pagan origins. After all, Thursday meant Thor's Day, and Saturday was Saturn's Day. The Puritans knew that the power to name time was also the power to control it. So it should come as no surprise that the 17th century Massachusetts almanacs did not refer to December 25 as Christmas Day. Instead, the date December 25 would be left without comment, or it would contain a notice that one of the county clerks, one of the county courts was due to set that day. An implicit reminder that in New England, December 25 was just another work day. And thus, Mr. Scrooge, as many today would say. Well, the success of the New England Puritans was impressive and long-lasting. Christmas was kept on the margins of early New England society. Still, it was never suppressed completely. Take, for example, two instances that are sometimes cited to show that the Puritan authorities succeeded in abolishing Christmas. We have already encountered the first of these in the entry for Christmas Day, 1621, in the journal of Governor William Bradford of Plymouth Colony. Bradford encountered a group of people who were taking the day off from work, and he promptly sent them back to work. Here, in the first full year of the Pilgrim's life in the New World, were a group of Christmas keepers. Nor did this group observe Christmas in a devout fashion, or even by simply staying in their houses. Bradford indicated that he would have allowed them that. What bothered the governor was that these Christmas keepers were, in his own words, out gaming and reveling in the streets. The second instance is the 1659 law passed by the Massachusetts Bay Colony, the law that levied a 5-shilling fine on anyone who was found observing any such day as Christmas or the like, either by forbearing of labor, feasting, or any other way. Well, such laws are not made, of course, unless there are people who are engaging in the forbidden activity. When the Massachusetts Bay Law of 1659, like Governor Bradford's earlier report, suggests that there were indeed people in Massachusetts who were observing Christmas in the late 1650s. Well, the law was clear on this point. It was designed for preventing disorders arising in several places within this jurisdiction by reason of some still observing such festivals as were superstitiously kept in other countries. The wording of the law also implied that the authorities were chiefly concerned, as Governor Bradford had been, not with private devotion, but with what the law termed disorders. The fact, well, excuse me, the point was reinforced by a provision in law that threatened to impose a second 5-shilling fine for gambling with cards or dice. A practice the court noted was, well, frequent in many places at such times as, well, Christmas. This is not to argue that Christmas was widely kept in second century Massachusetts. Well, for example, I found no records of prosecution, under the 1659 law, which remained in force until 1681, when it was repealed under pressure from London. Yeah, good old London. What does it argue? Excuse me. All right, try this again. What it does argue is that a festival with such old and deep roots in English culture could not simply be erased by fiat, well, God forbid, and that it always hovered just beneath the surface of New England culture, emerging emerging occasionally into plain sight. When that happened, it was in ways that confirmed the pilgrim nightmares of excess, disorder, and misrule. Who were the people who practiced Christmas misrule in 17th century New England? Not surprisingly, the evidence suggests that they were mostly on the margins of official New England culture or altogether outside it. It is difficult to know for sure. There is no Christmas episode so notorious as the 1627-28 confrontation, in which the Pilgrims of Plymouth Colony forcibly destroyed the maypole. They forcibly destroyed the maypole that had been defiantly set up on nearby Mount Wollaston by Thomas Morton and his merry men. No maypoles allowed here. Maypole, like Christmas, marked a seasonal celebration that resonated deeply in English popular culture. But that is only because Thomas Morton, no, was practically the sole New England representative of popular culture who was literate and even literary. He actually published a satirical account of the Maypo episode. The rest of New England's early Christmas keepers were at most barely literate, and they left no records. It was fishermen and mariners who had the reputation of being the most incorrigible sinners in New England, the region's least reformed inhabitants. Maritime communities such as Nantucket, the Isles of Shoals. Yeah, and especially the town of Marblehead were notorious for irreligion, heavy drinking, and loose sexual activity. They were also repositories of any English folk practices, places that ignored or resisted Orthodox New England culture. It is no coincidence that Marblehead was also a site of ongoing Christmas keeping. Hmm. In 1662, for example, a fisherman named William Hoare, a 33-year-old resident of Beverly, Massachusetts, was presented for suffering tippling, i.e., drinking, in his house by those who came to keep Christmas there. That is all we know about this event. But the Hoare family itself is another story. Hoare's wife and children. It's Hoar, by the way, in case you were wondering. Hoare's wife and children became notorious for their brazen defiance of Puritan authority. Huh. They carried on a long-term vendetta against the local minister, the Reverend John Hill, even to the point of regularly invading his house while he was away in order to consume his food and loot his goods. My. Hoare's wife, Dorcas, was a fortune teller. She specialized in psalmistry. Mm-mm-mm. And she cultivated the rumor that she was also a practicing witch. Hmm. Indeed, Dorcas Hoare's reputation finally brought her down. In the dark year of 1692, she was convicted of witchcraft and sentenced to hang on Gallows Hill, a victim of the Salem witchcraft outbreak. In our next reading, we will read about the Miser and the Sots, a Salem village wassail. I hope you enjoyed this reading. I tried to make the reading as interesting as possible and kind of play act a little bit with the reading so that it's kind of fun as we go through it. But these are true histories, and it's good to know this history of Christmas in America because we're only less than 2 months from Christmas. And guess what? It snowed yesterday. It just enough to see it in the light. But as soon as it hit the ground, it melted away. But they're predicting a lot of snow this winter. So that should be fun. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining me here on the C Files. I hope you enjoy the channel. And if you do, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. here on the C Files.